From groping TV host Anna Richardson and getting hit with a lawsuit.
Subsequently, I took legal action and I sued Schwarzenegger and his team for libel. So I have to be very careful about what I say, but I sued him for libel and we settled out of court.
To allegedly assaulting Rhonda Miller on 2 different sets and dragging a woman onto his lap during the filming of Terminator. These are the wildest times Arnold Schwarzenegger completely crossed the line with women. The Gold's Gym incident. Our journey begins in 1975 at the legendary Gold's Gym near Venice Beach, a place that would become synonymous with bodybuilding culture and the breeding ground for future Hollywood action stars. It was here, among the clanging weights and testosterone-fueled atmosphere, that a young Arnold Schwarzenegger was making his mark on the American fitness scene. For 19-year-old Elaine Stockton, what should have been a routine visit to watch her husband train would become a moment that would stay with her for decades. Stockton, married to bodybuilder Robbie Robinson, was no stranger to the machismo culture that permeated Gold's Gym. The atmosphere was rough, competitive, and decidedly masculine, where crude jokes and locker room talk were considered part of the territory. She had accompanied her husband to the gym many times before, understanding that this was his professional environment and respecting the culture that came with it. As Stockton stood watching her husband work out, she felt a presence behind her. Before she could turn around, Arnold Schwarzenegger allegedly approached her from behind, reached under her loose t-shirt, and touched her bare left breast without consent. The young woman, who wasn't wearing a bra, was shocked and immediately told her husband about the incident. However, the couple chose not to confront Schwarzenegger due to fears of repercussions in the tight-knit bodybuilding community. Arnold's imposing physical presence, combined with his growing reputation and connections in the industry, created an environment where victims felt powerless to speak out against his behavior. The bodybuilding community was small and insular, where reputation and relationships could make or break careers. Stockton would later describe the incident as humiliating rather than playful, emphasizing that there was nothing consensual or flirtatious about Schwarzenegger's actions. Her choice of words, humiliating, speaks to the psychological impact of the assault, which went beyond mere physical violation to include feelings of degradation and powerlessness. Unlike this relatively private gym setting where Schwarzenegger could claim the incident was hidden from public view, his next documented assault would occur in broad daylight on a public street. The Santa Monica Street Encounter. By 1980, Schwarzenegger's star was rising rapidly in Hollywood. He had already made his mark in bodybuilding and was beginning to transition into acting, though his breakout role in Conan the Barbarian was still a year away. It was during this period of growing fame and confidence that another disturbing incident occurred, demonstrating how his celebrity status seemed to embolden rather than temper his inappropriate behavior. The victim was a 22-year-old former professional beach volleyball player who knew Schwarzenegger casually through her work as a waitress in the Venice Beach area. The victim, whose identity remains protected in court documents and media reports, was simply walking down 19th Street off Wilshire Boulevard when she encountered Schwarzenegger. She had served him at the restaurant where she worked and knew him as a friendly acquaintance, someone who was becoming increasingly recognizable in the Venice Beach and Santa Monica fitness community. What happened next would demonstrate how the actor's growing celebrity status was changing the dynamic of his interactions with women. According to the woman's account, Schwarzenegger spotted her walking, called her over to his car, and then grabbed and squeezed her left breast. The casual nature of this assault is particularly disturbing. He literally called her over to his vehicle as if he wanted to have a friendly conversation, then immediately violated her personal space and dignity. The fact that this occurred in broad daylight on a busy street in Santa Monica speaks to Schwarzenegger's growing sense of impunity and entitlement. The victim's response to this assault revealed both her strength and the helplessness she felt in the face of Schwarzenegger's actions. She told him that if she were a man, she would have responded with physical retaliation, but Schwarzenegger simply laughed off her threat. The woman didn't just brush off what happened. She was so deeply affected that she cried afterward and immediately confided in her sister. Her sister later confirmed the account, noting how deeply offended and upset the victim had been by Schwarzenegger's actions. This contemporaneous corroboration adds significant weight to the allegation and demonstrates the genuine trauma experienced by the victim. Schwarzenegger felt so confident in his ability to get away with such behavior that he didn't hesitate to assault someone he barely knew in full view of potential witnesses. The Columbia Pictures Office assault. As Schwarzenegger's Hollywood career gained momentum in the late 1980s, his interactions with industry professionals became more frequent and, unfortunately, more problematic. The Columbia Pictures lot, a symbol of Hollywood's golden age and continuing power, became the setting for one of the most detailed and disturbing accounts of Schwarzenegger's alleged misconduct. This incident, involving a movie studio secretary in her 30s, would demonstrate how his behavior had evolved from opportunistic assaults to calculated, prolonged violations that exploited professional power dynamics. suspects. The victim was a professional woman working in the entertainment industry, someone who had likely encountered numerous celebrities and powerful figures throughout her career. She was an experienced secretary who understood the informal nature of Hollywood business meetings and was accustomed to the sometimes casual behavior of actors and producers. She was attending a meeting in a production office, presumably conducting business related to one of Schwarzenegger's film projects. According to the secretary's account, during the meeting, Schwarzenegger remained seated while she was standing, slipped his left hand under her skirt, gripped her right buttock for approximately 20 seconds, and made the comment, "You have a very nice ass. I'd love to work you out." The duration of this assault, a full 20 seconds, is particularly significant. This wasn't a brief, impulsive touch that could be dismissed as an accident or momentary lapse in judgment. It was a sustained violation that the victim had to endure while trying to maintain her professional composure. What makes this incident even more disturbing is what happened after the initial assault. The victim managed to extract herself from the situation with her boss's help, but Schwarzenegger followed up with a phone call, repeating his inappropriate invitation, which the victim chose to ignore. This follow-up contact demonstrates that the assault wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment, but part of a calculated pattern of predatory behavior. He had obtained her contact information and used it to continue his harassment, showing a complete disregard for her obvious rejection of his advances. Unlike this private office encounter, where Schwarzenegger could control the environment and limit witnesses, our next incident would show how his behavior became even more public and humiliating. The Terminator. Two-set humiliation. The set of Terminator 2: Judgment Day in 1990 represented the pinnacle of Schwarzenegger's action movie career. The film would become one of the most successful and influential action movies of all time, cementing his status as Hollywood's premier action star and generating over $500 million worldwide. However, for the cast and crew working on this prestigious production, the set was also the scene of some of Schwarzenegger's most disturbing alleged behavior. The incident involving a female crew member in Fontana would demonstrate how his predatory actions had evolved to include public humiliation and sophisticated psychological manipulation. The victim was a professional working in the film industry, someone who had likely worked on numerous productions and was familiar with the sometimes chaotic and informal atmosphere of movie sets. Film sets, particularly for big-budget action movies, are known for their high-pressure environment, long hours, and sometimes crude humor. However, nothing in her professional experience could have prepared her for what Schwarzenegger allegedly did to her in front of her colleagues and peers. According to the crew member's account, while sitting in a director's chair surrounded by other men, Schwarzenegger called her over, pulled her onto his lap, and whispered a graphic sexual question, "Have you ever had a man slide his tongue in your anus?" The public nature of this assault, conducted in front of smiling onlookers, added a layer of humiliation that went beyond the physical violation. This wasn't a private moment of misconduct. It was a performance designed to entertain an audience while degrading the victim. The victim's description of feeling isolated amid the smiling onlookers reveals the psychological sophistication of this particular assault. Schwarzenegger didn't just violate her physically by pulling her onto his lap. He also created a situation where she was surrounded by men who seemed to approve of or at least tolerate his behavior. Their smiles and apparent enjoyment of the spectacle made it clear that they viewed her not as a colleague deserving of respect, but as entertainment for their amusement. This isolation made it even more difficult for her to resist or seek help from those around her. The graphic nature of Schwarzenegger's whispered question represents a significant escalation in his pattern of behavior. While previous incidents had involved unwanted touching and crude comments, this assault included explicit sexual language that was designed to shock and degrade the victim. The specific nature of his question was particularly invasive and humiliating, crossing boundaries of decency that even the crude environment of an action movie set would typically maintain. It wasn't just about physical gratification, it was about exercising power and control through humiliation. The victim's later reflection on the incident, that she wished she had been more assertive but feared industry repercussions, highlights the impossible position that women in Hollywood often found themselves in when confronted with powerful abusers. While this incident involved psychological manipulation in a group setting designed to maximize humiliation, our next case would show how Schwarzenegger operated in more intimate, high-profile situations, using his celebrity status and media appearances as opportunities for assault. The Dorchester Hotel interview assault. By 2000, Schwarzenegger had transitioned from action star to a more mature phase of his career, taking on roles that showcased his range while maintaining his status as one of Hollywood's most bankable stars. The Sixth Day, his science fiction thriller about cloning, was being promoted internationally, and Schwarzenegger was conducting interviews with media outlets around the world. It was during this promotional tour that he encountered Anna Richardson, a 29-year-old British television host, at the prestigious Dorchester Hotel in London. What transpired would become one of the most well-documented and legally contentious frivolous allegations against Schwarzenegger. Anna Richardson was an experienced television presenter who had conducted numerous celebrity interviews throughout her career. She was known for her professionalism and her ability to put guests at ease while extracting interesting content. Richardson had actually interviewed Schwarzenegger on previous occasions without incident, which makes what happened during this particular encounter all the more shocking and unexpected. She was there to do her job, to conduct a professional interview about Schwarzenegger's latest film. According to Richardson's detailed account, during the promotional interview, Schwarzenegger pulled her onto his knee, asked if her breasts were real, circled her left nipple with his finger, and confirmed that they were indeed real.
Subsequently, I took legal action and I sued Schwarzenegger and his team for libel. So I have to be very careful about what I say, but I sued him for libel and we settled out of court.
This assault was particularly brazen because it occurred during a professional interview, likely with cameras rolling and other media personnel present in the room. First, the question about whether her breasts were real demonstrates a dehumanizing attitude toward women, reducing them to body parts for his examination and evaluation. This wasn't a compliment or flirtation. It was an objectification that stripped away Richardson's professional identity. Richardson's professional experience made her particularly qualified to assess the abnormality of Schwarzenegger's behavior. She had interviewed countless celebrities and was familiar with the sometimes informal and flirtatious nature of promotional interviews. However, what Schwarzenegger did crossed every line of professional and personal decency. Richardson noted that she felt unsupported by others in the room during the incident, highlighting how the culture of celebrity worship often leaves victims isolated and vulnerable, even in supposedly professional settings. The aftermath demonstrates the additional trauma that victims of powerful men often face when they decide to speak out. Rather than simply apologizing for his behavior, Schwarzenegger's team claimed that Richardson had somehow provoked the assault, leading to a contentious legal battle that would last for years. Richardson filed a libel lawsuit against Schwarzenegger in 2004, which was eventually settled in 2006. While the terms were not disclosed, the 6-year legal battle speaks to the complexity and seriousness of the allegations. Unlike this high-profile media encounter where Richardson had some professional standing, our next incident would reveal a pattern of repeated assaults in private settings where victims had even less power and fewer options for seeking help or justice. The Fontana Hotel elevator terror. The production of Terminator 2 Inches was tainted by multiple allegations of misconduct, with the Fontana Hotel elevator incidents representing perhaps the most disturbing pattern of alleged abuse in our entire investigation. These incidents demonstrate how Schwarzenegger's predatory behavior had evolved into systematic victimization, targeting the same woman repeatedly in a confined space where escape was virtually impossible. The victim was a female crew member who was still working in the film industry when she came forward years later, making her decision to speak out particularly courageous given the potential professional consequences. According to the crew member's detailed account, Schwarzenegger groped her and attempted to remove her robe and pull down the straps of her one-piece swimsuit on at least 3 separate occasions in a hotel elevator. The victim was wearing a terry cloth robe over her swimsuit, suggesting that these incidents occurred during leisure time, possibly when she was going to or from the hotel pool or spa facilities. The repeated nature of these assaults demonstrates that this wasn't a single moment of poor judgment, but rather a deliberate pattern of predatory behavior. The setting of these alleged assaults, a hotel elevator, is particularly significant for several disturbing reasons. First, elevators are enclosed spaces where victims can feel trapped and helpless, making them ideal locations for predators who want to assault someone without fear of intervention. The confined space creates a sense of claustrophobia and panic that can leave victims too shocked and frightened to respond effectively. Second, the brief duration of elevator rides creates a sense of urgency that can overwhelm victims' ability to process what is happening and respond appropriately. The nature of Schwarzenegger's alleged actions reveals a disturbing escalation in his pattern of behavior. Unlike previous incidents that involved touching over clothing, these assaults allegedly involved attempts to remove the victim's clothing entirely and access her intimate body parts. Unlike these repeated private assaults, where victims were isolated and vulnerable, our next incident would show how Schwarzenegger's behavior became more elaborate and performative in front of audiences, using public humiliation as a tool of degradation while turning sexual assault into a form of twisted entertainment. The twins set Carla sandwich assault. The 1988 production of Twins marked Schwarzenegger's ambitious attempt to transition from action hero to comedic actor, paired with Danny DeVito in a high-concept comedy about unlikely siblings. The film represented a significant departure from his previous roles and was seen as a test of his versatility as a performer. However, the production of this seemingly innocent comedy would become the setting for one of the most disturbing and humiliating incidents in our investigation, the assault of stand-in. Actress Carla would demonstrate how Schwarzenegger's predatory behavior had evolved to include elaborate psychological manipulation and public humiliation. Carla was working as a stand-in for Kelly Preston, who played one of the female leads in Twins. Stand-ins are essential but often overlooked members of film crews who help cinematographers and directors set up shots while the principal actors are in makeup or preparing for scenes. They must match the physical characteristics of the actors they're replacing, and often spend long hours on set in uncomfortable conditions. Barron was simply doing her job, trying to contribute to the success of the production and build her career in the entertainment industry. According to Barron's account, Schwarzenegger announced to those around him that he wanted to make a Carla sandwich, then proceeded to sandwich her between himself and another co-worker before forcing his tongue into her mouth in an unwanted kiss. The premeditated nature of this assault, the verbal announcement of his intentions, makes it particularly disturbing. This wasn't an impulsive act committed in a moment of passion or poor judgment. It was a calculated performance designed to humiliate and degrade the victim while entertaining the onlookers. The physical aspects of this assault were particularly degrading and designed to maximize the victim's helplessness and humiliation. By positioning Barron between himself and another man, Schwarzenegger created a situation where she was physically trapped and unable to escape. The sandwich reference reduced her to nothing more than an object for his amusement, stripping away her humanity and dignity in front of her professional colleagues. The metaphor was particularly dehumanizing, suggesting that she existed solely for the gratification of the men surrounding her. Barron described the taste of Schwarzenegger's forced kiss as like an ashtray of human flesh due to his recent cigar smoking. This graphic detail not only demonstrates the non-consensual nature of the contact, but also highlights the additional layer of disgust and violation that victims often experience during such assaults. The specific mention of cigar smoke creates a sensory memory that would be impossible to fabricate and suggests the lasting impact this traumatic experience had on her. While this incident involved elaborate staging for an audience and turned assault into entertainment, our next case would show how Schwarzenegger's behavior extended beyond the entertainment industry into other professional settings, demonstrating that his predatory behavior wasn't limited to Hollywood environments. The CNN stairwell ambush. During the 1980s, Schwarzenegger's meteoric rise to fame brought him into contact with media outlets around the world, including CNN, the prestigious cable news network that was revolutionizing television journalism. His success in bodybuilding and his emerging film career made him an increasingly sought-after interview subject, and media appearances were crucial for promoting his movies and building his brand. However, it was during one of these professional interactions that another disturbing incident allegedly occurred, this time involving a young woman who was interning at CNN and had every right to expect her workplace to be safe and professional. The victim was an intern at CNN, someone who was likely just starting her career in journalism or media production, and was thrilled to be working at one of the most respected news organizations in the world. Internships at major news networks are highly competitive and represent significant opportunities for young people to gain experience, make connections, and launch careers in the industry. The victim would have been eager to make a good impression and prove herself worthy of future opportunities in the field. According to the intern's account, Schwarzenegger grabbed her buttocks while they were in a stairwell at the CNN offices. The setting of this alleged assault, a stairwell, is particularly significant because it represents a liminal space within office buildings where people are typically alone and vulnerable. Stairwells are transitional areas that employees use to move between floors, often deserted and isolated from the main flow of office traffic. They're locations where someone could easily commit an assault without fear of being witnessed or interrupted. The brief nature of this incident, as described by the victim, doesn't diminish its significance or impact. Sexual misconduct doesn't need to be prolonged or elaborate to be traumatic and damaging. In fact, the sudden, unexpected nature of the assault would have been particularly shocking to someone who was simply going about their normal work routine. The victim was probably moving between floors for work-related purposes when she was suddenly and violently violated. Unlike this brief workplace encounter, where the victim had minimal contact with Schwarzenegger, our next incidents would show sustained patterns of abuse against the same victim, demonstrating how his predatory behavior could escalate into systematic victimization over multiple productions and years. The Terminator, two-breast assault and photography. The production of Terminator 2, Judgment Day in 1991 was one of the most ambitious and expensive film projects of its time, featuring groundbreaking special effects and spectacular action sequences. However, behind the technological marvels and cinematic achievements, the set was allegedly the scene of some of Arnold Schwarzenegger's most disturbing and invasive misconduct. The assault of stuntwoman Rhonda Miller would represent a significant escalation in the severity and invasiveness of his alleged behavior, incorporating elements of sexual assault, humiliation, and non-consensual non-consensual photography. Rhonda Miller was a professional stuntwoman, someone who had chosen to work in one of the most dangerous and demanding aspects of film production. Stuntwomen are skilled athletes who put their bodies at risk to create the spectacular action sequences that audiences love. They undergo extensive training in martial arts, gymnastics, driving, and other physical skills, and they must maintain peak physical condition to perform their jobs safely and effectively. Miller's decision to work on Terminator 2 Inches should have been a career highlight, but instead, it became the setting for alleged assaults that would haunt her for years. According to Miller's detailed allegations, which were part of a 2004 lawsuit against Schwarzenegger, he pulled up her shirt, sucked on her breasts, and took a photograph of them without her consent. This alleged assault represents a significant escalation in the invasiveness and severity of Schwarzenegger's misconduct compared to previous incidents. Unlike earlier allegations that involved touching over or under clothing, this assault allegedly involved the complete exposure and intimate contact with the victim's body parts. The non-consensual photography aspect of this alleged assault is particularly disturbing and represents a form of sexual exploitation that goes beyond physical assault into the realm of permanent victimization. Taking photographs of someone's intimate body parts without consent is not only a violation of their privacy and dignity, but also creates the potential for ongoing victimization through the distribution or threatened distribution of these images. The fact that Schwarzenegger allegedly felt comfortable taking such photographs suggests an extreme level of entitlement and disregard for his victim's rights and dignity. Miller's decision to file a lawsuit against Schwarzenegger in 2004 was a significant act of courage that brought public attention to his alleged pattern of misconduct. The lawsuit included allegations of both sexual assault and defamation, highlighting not only the physical violations, but also the damage to her reputation and career that resulted from speaking out. The timing of her 2004 lawsuit, filed just as Schwarzenegger was beginning his political career as governor of California, suggests that she may have been motivated by a desire to prevent an alleged sexual predator from holding public office. The professional implications of this alleged assault were particularly severe for Miller. As a stuntwoman working in a highly specialized and male-dominated field, being sexually assaulted by the star of a major production would have made it extremely difficult for her to continue working effectively and safely. Thanks for watching. Check out other cards on the screen.